Hi, Eric. I just saw your question in the chat. Yes, we are here. We are going to get started at 5 o'clock, so we're just waiting a few minutes.
Nora, are you guys going to switch me over to the Spanish room? Have you guys tried that to switch?
Sydney, you'll do that, right?
Yes.
So do you guys want me to just let everybody know that there's the Spanish interpretation with the globe icon on the bottom of the screen and that they can switch over? Okay. Hopefully it works, even though we haven't tested it tonight. Fingers crossed.
Yep. Always hope that technology is in our favor.
I know. Okay.
Dan, I'm seeing a comment in the chat that you can't hear. Can you hear us now? We weren't talking earlier. We'll just wait another minute or two to let folks join, who may be coming from other engagements. All right. It's 5 o'clock. I think we should go ahead and get started, team. Cool. So yeah, I am just going to kick it off. Thank you all for joining the Denver Moves Bikes Update Community Meeting tonight. I'm going to pass the torch over to Lucia, who's going to describe our Spanish translation.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Me llamo Lucía, soy una intérprete. Abajo de la pantalla hay un icono de globo que si requieren interpretación para esta cita de hoy, para esta junta, pueden deslizar el icono y van a llevar a una interpretación en vivo en español.
Great. Thank you, Lucia. If you can go to the next slide, please. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us. I just want to go over really quick our agenda for this evening, kind of rules of the road, as we will say. So tonight we've got the Q&A enabled and we've disabled the chat. So we hope that you guys can send us questions in that Q&A box, and we will pause a couple of times to answer questions. And any questions that we can't get to, we'll definitely take note of those and send out a follow-up to everybody with kind of a frequently asked questions and things that we couldn't get to in our hour meeting tonight. Just make sure we're keeping everything civil and polite, be nice to each other, be nice to all of our panelists here who are chatting. And yeah, thank you all for joining us again. So our agenda tonight, we're going to go over an introductions of the project team. Who are we? We're going to go over why we're here, the plan overview, what we're doing. We'll give a little context and history for the Denver Bike program, talk about how this relates to Denver Moves Everyone and some of our other efforts in the bike program. We'll pause for Q&A at this point, and then we'll do a quick blurb about our schedule and public input tool. And Sydney's going to demo our online tool and show everybody how to use it. And then we'll pause again for a Q&A at that time. Cool. So quick intros. Who's the project team? Next slide, Sydney, please. So my name is Taylor Phillips. I am a planner at the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And I'll introduce our lovely assistants for the evening. So Sydney Proven works for Fair and Fears. She's one of our consultants on this project. And Nora is one of our other public outreach consultants on this project with NHN Consulting. So we're kind of our panelists for this evening and working hard on this project. Next slide. So yeah, we'll give you a quick plan overview. So what are we going to talk about tonight? So the basic outcomes of the Denver Moves Bike update. This is an update to our 2015 bike plan. So the three main things that we want to do here, this project will recommend more bikeways on more streets. So we're going to densify that network that we created back in 2015. We want to build more comfortable and connected bikeways. So we want to make sure that those bikeways that we do construct are comfortable and safe for all roadway users. And third, we want to develop a program to upgrade our existing bikeways over time. And I'll touch on a little bit more of all of these 3 points later on in our presentation. So why are we doing this? This is a great question. We typically like to update our modal plans, as we call them. So bike, ped, and transit. We do this every kind of 5 to 10 years as we see things have changed. And we know a ton has changed since 2015, including but not limited to, we've got e-scooters on the streets. We have e-bikes, Uber, Lyft, a pandemic happened. We've updated the way we actually design bikeways in Denver and nationwide. So all of this stuff has changed and it's just time for a refresh here at Dottie. Another reason we're updating this plan is to just make sure we're revisiting the larger vision and long-term direction of Denver's bike network, making sure that we can build bikeways more quickly and cost effectively. By doing this plan now, we're kind of cutting out a little bit of that planning phase when we start to do a project, a new bikeway project. And this will help us focus more resources on implementing new projects quicker. We'll also be we've built so many bikeways since 2015, so we're going to take a look at how we can make sure our existing bikeways are up to our standard and prioritize some of those for improvements. So I just wanted to give everyone a quick context and history of kind of the Denver Bike program and how we got to where we are today. That'll help ground us for the rest of the evening here. So what is the Denver Bike Network? So this is kind of the nitty-gritty of what we're updating through this project. You see here our map from 2015 of our existing and recommended bikeways. So those existing bikeways are in the solid lines, and then recommended are the dashed. And recommended just means that this is a project that Dottie would like to do someday. So this plan really outlines for us where and what our bikeways will look like someday in the future. And each of those colored lines denote different types of bikeways, which on the next slide, we'll have some images of each of those. So our bike network is generally made up of 5 different facility types. So the 3 on the top row here that are highlighted in green, that is neighborhood bikeways, trails and shared use paths, and protected bike lanes. These three we call our high comfort bikeways. So we call these high comfort because based on research both in the Denver metro region and nationally, this has been replicated, most people feel the most comfortable riding their bikes on these three facility types. We call these, our 8 to 80. So anyone from the age 8 to 80 should be able to feel comfortable riding a bike on these three facility types. And then bike lanes and buffered bike lanes. These are two tools in the toolbox that we use still frequently. They're not our high comfort bikeway facility types, but they can be used on kind of some of our lower speed and volume roads. And they help us connect that high comfort bikeway network in some locations where maybe there's some geometric constraints in the roadway that won't allow us to fit some of the high comfort bikeway facility types. But our real goal here is to build as many high comfort bikeways as possible so that every household in Denver is within 1/4 mile of a high comfort bikeway. That's our long-term vision for this plan. And I just wanted to take a moment here to dive deeper into neighborhood bikeways because we get questions about this facility type a lot. So back in the 1990s and early 2000s, traffic engineers would slap, a share on a roadway and a sign that says share the road, and they would say, cool, we're done. We built a bikeway. We did our job. But that is no longer the case. Neighborhood bikeways are a huge upgrade from what we would consider our old kind of shared lane markings or share row routes, as some folks call them. So these are streets that we've implemented traffic calming measures. So some examples of those in the top left, you can see traffic circles, curb extensions. These tools help us to slow vehicle traffic. We also install diverters so that disallows motor vehicles from making certain turns onto our neighborhood bikeways. And that keeps the number of cars on those streets super low so that when you see a car on the neighborhood bikeways, it's going to be really infrequent. And when you do see them, it's going to be, they're going to be traveling very slowly. We also incorporate wayfinding in all of our bikeways, but our neighborhood bikeways have some little special branding. We love these little bears and that help tell folks how to get to different locations in Denver safely on our bikeway network. So those are neighborhood bikeways. So a really quick history of Denver's bike program, and this kind of gives us some context for how we got here today. So back in 2011, we wrote the first Denver Moves bike plan. That was our original bike network map. And we really just followed the street paving program at a pretty low budget, pretty small bike program, didn't build a ton back in 2011. And then in 2015, we updated Denver Moves Bikes. We started building a few more projects. We started doing one-off capital projects to build bikeways specifically. And then between 2016 and 2023, we started doing the community transportation networks projects. We updated our bikeway design manual. We installed during this period something like 200 miles of new bikeways. So we've grown a ton in the last 12-ish years since our first Denver Moves Bikes plan was adopted. So now here we are, all of the stuff has changed and it's time for a refresh. So now we're going to update that bike network map, make sure that we have a dense future network that allows all folks to be within 1/4 mile of a high comfort bikeway. And we're also going to take a look at how do we improve our existing bikeways, both longitudinally, whole infrastructure projects for multiple blocks, and how do we look at kind of spot improvements that'll help make our tricky intersections and tricky connections feel more comfortable and be safer. Slide. So we have a lot going on in the bike program here at Dottie, and some of our, I just want to take a moment here to talk about how all of our different initiatives kind of fit together. So the first I alluded to earlier is the community transportation networks projects. These are still going strong. This is the main mechanism through which Dottie builds bikeways. So you may have noticed a ton of construction in northwest, central, and south central Denver over the past summer. So those were community transportation networks projects that built bikeways in those 3 areas. So we'll be coming back next summer with our phase 2 construction projects in those same areas. And then we'll be kicking off shortly a new community transportation network area in the Globeville and Elyria Swansea neighborhoods. We're calling that the North Central Community Transportation Network. So look forward to more info on that later in 2024 as that kicks off. So another initiative that we've been working on is the Vision Zero and Bikeways evaluation study. You all may have seen another survey and some signage with little QR codes to take a survey on a few select streets in those community transportation network areas in particular. So I like to think of this project as the engineering arm of our project. So they're looking at design treatments. How does this traffic circle work? How does this new speed hump work? Do the things that we put in the roadway to calm traffic, slow vehicle speeds, make it safer and more comfortable for folks biking, walking, and driving? Are those things working and doing the things that we thought they would? So we're taking before and after data to come up with a report that tells us how those things are doing and make some changes if necessary to some of our design treatments. So some of that info will be fed into our project, the Denver Moves Bikes Update. So our project is really taking that 10,000-foot view at the city as a whole. So we're looking at where bikeways go and what types of bikeways are we going to put on the road. So this is big zoomed out level, whereas Vision Zero Bikeways evaluation study is that nitty-gritty engineering level. Cool. So how does this connect to Denver Moves Everyone? We had a lot of public meetings and outreach in the past 3-ish years about Denver Moves Everyone, and that wrapped up this year, which was super exciting. So how does this connect to Denver Moves Everyone? Next slide. And the answer is it connects perfectly well. So Denver Moves Everyone is kind of our North Star, our guiding light that helps us to set our vision and goals for the city and helps us develop capital plans and projects that will move us forward toward those goals. So this project is just taking a finer tooth comb to the bike network specifically, and all of the recommendations that come out of this project will be fed back into Denver Moves Everyone, and then put into that kind of capital plan that helps us move toward our goals. In addition to being integrated with Denver Moves Everyone, pushing those recommendations forward, we also stole Denver Moves Everyone's project goals. So we're just putting kind of a bikey spin on these these goals from Denver Moves Everyone. So really quick, I want to touch on all of these because I think they're really important. Equity is kind of our main goal, and we make sure that equity flows through each of these goals and is elevated within each of them. So the first goal is mobility. We want to make sure our network is convenient, affordable, and efficient. We want to make sure that there's equitable access for all people moving around Denver on a bike. Safety, we want to make sure people of all ages and abilities are safe and comfortable to move around Denver without a car. And we want to make sure that low-income households and people of color in Denver are not disproportionately impacted by traffic violence. The third one is sustainability. So we want to make sure we're encouraging transportation options that reduce air pollution, combat climate change, and eliminate health inequities. Is super important. Community, we want to make sure that the results of this plan are shaped by community needs. And we want to make sure that the bike network enables folks to have stronger connections between community members. And then finally, quality. We want to make sure our multimodal transportation infrastructure is high quality, it's kept in a state of good repair, and that we're collaborating not only within DOTI, but within other city agencies and with the community to make sure that that happens. So back when we finished Denver Moves Everyone, we're doing Denver Moves Everyone, we estimated how much money would we need to actually achieve all the Denver Moves Everyone goals, build the miles of bikeways that we need to achieve these goals, the sidewalk network, the crossings, the transit infrastructure. And we found that there's about a $630 million annual funding gap in order to achieve our goals. So we asked people, how would you prioritize money to build our network, to build our transportation system? We at Dottie, as planners, my job is to help make sure we prioritize projects that have the greatest impact. So we asked the community this question: would you rather, particularly for bikeways, build projects with temporary materials, but in more places? So expanding our system, building more in more places, but maybe the materials are cheaper, quick build, they don't look as pretty. Or would you like to improve our system? So would you like to have more permanent installations of bikeways, but in fewer places? So that looks like those beautiful concrete curb extensions, concrete separators for protected bike lanes. And we found that folks were pretty split. Citywide, 55% of folks wanted that expanding our system, temporary materials in more places, and 45% wanted more permanent installations with concrete, but maybe in fewer places. So that really resonated with us. We heard that, you know, we need to do a better job of building some of those permanent installations for our bike network, while still expanding our system and making sure that our bike network is accessible by all Denverites, no matter where you live. So that's where this kind of bikeway upgrade piece of this project came from, was we recognize that there's a desire citywide to upgrade our existing bikeways to that kind of higher level of comfort, more aesthetically pleasing types of materials. So our Bikeway upgrade program, I see as kind of two prongs. So the first is that Bikeway upgrades, so wholesale, let's take a bike lane and upgrade it to a protected bike lane. Or let's take a paint and post or temporary materials project and upgrade that to more permanent concrete materials. And then the second piece of this is spot improvements. And this is one of the pieces that we really, really want your feedback on, is where are there just a little intersection improvement that we could make that would make your whole commute feel a lot more comfortable and a lot safer. Particularly intersections. We know that intersections are the most dangerous and the most uncomfortable part of our roadway network, not just for bikes, but for pedestrians, folks driving, folks taking transit. So how can we do these little spot improvements at intersections to really make a big difference in the bike network and make everyone feel safer and more comfortable using the network? So I'll pause here and let Nora be our moderator and pull some questions from the chat.
We have an active group tonight. So we're not going to get to everything, but we'll do the best that we can. Let's see. Can you explain how you collect data and use it to support this endeavor?
Yeah, so we're going to collect so much data. So we're going to use kind of what we call big data to inform a lot of our vehicle speed and volume data. But in addition, we know that some of that big data stuff doesn't get us what we need. So we're going to go out and collect vehicle speed and volume counts on our roadways. So usually we either use video or those tubes that you see in the roads. Usually you'll put two of those, we call them pneumatic tubes, and they count pulses of air and help us count vehicle speeds and volumes. In addition to that, we'll be using kind of demand data. So where do people want to go? Where are people currently going? And where is there what we call latent demand, where maybe there's a trip that somebody wants to take on a bike, but there's not the infrastructure to get you from A to B. So we have that kind of information that'll be pulled in to this planning effort. Yeah, and a whole host of other data. That's just a piece of the pie.
Yeah. Kenyon asks, are other cities in the area included in your planning? Are they doing similar planning? How are you connecting to them?
Yeah, great question. I was actually, this is a great timing, chatting with one of our colleagues at DRCOG, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and they're kicking off an active transportation plan very soon as well. That'll be looking at region-wide, how do all of our bikeways connect to each other and making sure that we're all in alignment there. So while we at the city of Denver don't have any pull on how, Lakewood or Aurora designs and where they put their bikeways, we'll definitely be pulling in their plans and their existing bikeway networks that will inform ours so that we can make sure that we're connecting into their networks. And we'll be working really closely with DRCOG on their plan too.
So we have a question about funding. There's a gap, but where does the funding come from? In addition to the city budget, are there state and federal funds that are available?
Yeah, and those are kind of on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, there's definitely the general transportation fund that we pull from. We often do bonds come up every once in a while, and that helps us build bikeways sometimes. And then state and federal funding is also kind of comes and goes, yeah.
Are you incorporating best practices from other cities? How are you pulling in what's happening in other places to inform Denver?
Yeah, great question. So our bike design manual, which is kind of our design guideline for how we build bikeways and what types of facilities we can put on certain types of roads with different vehicle speeds and volumes. That was very much informed by national best practice research from, we call it NACTO, the North American City Transportation Officials, as kind of one of the bigger guides out there for how to design bikeways, and AASHTO as well. So yeah, we've pulled in a bunch of info from cities all over the country and all over the world for how we design bikeways. And then we'll definitely be looking at some of our peer cities for how they've done similar bike plans in the past as well.
We have a question about the mapping tool. How are you grabbing the suggestions? How will you rank them? And how will you implement them down the road? We're jumping the gun a little bit, but maybe that can cue us up for the tool, which is an important part of this phase of the project.
Yeah, maybe we punt that to the latter end of the presentation, because Sydney's going to cover here in a minute the online tool, how it works, how we're going to port all of that information into our plan.
Yep. So let's keep
let's hold that one for a minute. And if Sydney's presentation doesn't answer your question, we feel free to type another one in the chat.
So Kitty would like you to go over phase 2 of the project, just to clarify what comes next after this phase 1.
Yeah, great question. And we'll have more slides on that here in a second too. So phase 1 is really our data gathering. We're learning from the public. We're getting existing conditions. And then phase 2, we're going to have a draft recommended bikeway network so that we'll have opportunity for folks to weigh in on and provide comments on. And that will be in the summer of 2024. So not too long from now.
We do have a question from Pete saying, if an RNO wanted to spruce up their quick fix infrastructure that's currently in place, is there a way to do that?
Yes, we do have. I'll put some info in the chat here later to a website, but we do have a program that particularly helps residents put murals in the street, so paint murals at intersections and do some beautification projects in their neighborhoods on their streets. And that's definitely one mechanism that your RNO should look to do that.
Can you tell us a little bit about emergency vehicles on neighborhood bikeways and passability?
Yeah, definitely. So emergency vehicles are certainly very important on our neighborhood bikeways on all of our streets. We design neighborhood bikeways with emergency vehicles, particularly fire trucks, as they're the largest emergency vehicle in mind. So all of the treatments that we install on neighborhood bikeways are mountable by Denver fire trucks. Yeah, fire trucks can turn right and go straight through traffic circles and can make lefts through traffic circles and all that good stuff. So yeah.
How do you balance parking and biking?
Great question. It's really a street by street, case by case basis, but we like to, at the city, our main goal here is to provide more choices for people to get around. So currently, in a lot of our neighborhoods, it's pretty tough to get around on a bike. So we have to weigh kind of the pros and cons. Is there street parking or other adequate parking opportunity on side streets, other streets? Do most folks have driveways and garages on a corridor? So there's tons and tons of factors that go into whether or not parking needs to be removed on any given corridor. And it's really case by case basis. And every street I like to think of is kind of a little bit of a special snowflake and has its own characteristics that we have to weigh when we determine whether or not parking can or needs to be removed for a project.
Let's see here. We have so many questions. Will you reach out to residents on individual corridors as these projects go forward?
As projects move to the planning and design phase, so when we get funding to actually start a project that will eventually be built, yes, we usually do try to go door to door or do more targeted outreach. Unfortunately for this plan, since it is citywide, that would be next to impossible to go door to door to every single household in Denver. So we're really relying on online engagement. We have some events at specific community touch points, and we have community-based outreach partners. So community members who are paid for their time to help us do outreach in hard to reach communities, which we'll talk about here in a minute as well, are helping us to get the word out. So we're really doing our best to make sure that everybody hears about this project.
This might be our last question before we move on to the next stage, but for historic parts of town, how are the changes approved? Is Landmark involved?
Yeah, great question. So typically Landmark is, we chat with them, we consult with them and get their buy-off. However, for matters pertaining to roadway safety in particular, Dottie isn't bound by any kind of rules or regulations that the Landmark puts in place. Those rules and regulations typically are applied from the curb line out and to private property, not as much in the roadway. So yes, we definitely try to make sure that we're collaborating and consulting with Landmark, but we as a Dottie have authority on our roadways to build projects that enhance safety for all road users. And with that, yeah, we'll come back and have another Q&A section here at the end, but I want to make sure that we get through our presentation tonight.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yep.
I'll take over from here. So for folks who are interested in participating in this, we wanted to just spend a quick amount of time getting your thoughts on the bigger vision that you hope for Denver's bike network. So in a minute, I'm going to talk about our online survey and our tool. I see in the chat, folks have really specific projects and locations that they're interested in. So we definitely have ways to capture that and input, and we want all that input, but want to start before we dive in there to at a little bit higher level. So if on your phone or on your computer, you type in Menti, MENTI.com, and use this code 92950674. You can answer this question: what are your hopes for Denver's bike network in the next 20 years? So interested for you all to just take a few minutes and think high level, both citywide, what do you want the bike network to look like, as well as obviously 20 years is a long time. A lot can happen. We saw how much can happen just in 12 years from the inception of the bike program. So in 20 years, what is your big picture idea? What's the direction that you would like to see the bike network evolve in that time? So already seeing some great words popping up to the top here: connected, safe, and comfortable, and complete, convenient, are all ones that are popping up, and a lot of other great contributions here, getting lots coming in. So I'll just give you guys a few more minutes to keep submitting responses. Comfortable, protected, accessible, extensive, thorough. So a lot of common themes across here. I love the word fun. I think that's a great part about biking and scooting and rolling around town. No deaths, family friendly, efficient, safe for rollers and walkers. All weather. And obviously all of these are great. I'm not just, I'm just picking them as they're coming in because there's so many, but yeah, some really great ideas coming in here. That all right, I'll give about 30 more seconds before we move on. It looks like safe, connected, comfortable, protected, complete, accessible are all rising to the top, and then a lot of connected themes throughout the other phrases that people have submitted. All right, I'll move on to the next slide, but thank you for taking the time to think about this and giving us your input on this. We'll definitely continue to take these higher level ideas into the next stages of our projects, but I'll start diving into the more nitty-gritty part of our public input. So appreciate that, participating in that higher level thinking for a minute. All right, so this speaks a little bit to some of the questions we got about what are we doing with data and input, and what does phase 2 and 3 even look like for this project? So we're now here at this beginning phase that we called reorient. So fall of 2023 and into winter of 2023, obviously. And so really in this phase, as Taylor mentioned, we're information gathering. So this is the first citywide chance for people to give comment on the citywide bike network again. So having that comment period by having this virtual meeting now, having an online survey and interactive map, which I'll be demoing and talking a little bit more about in a second. And then we also are having pop-up events, Taylor mentioned this, around the city, particularly targeting those events in neighborhoods that are harder to reach online and populations that are less likely to engage in this online platform. And with that, we are also starting to pull together the non-public input data that we'll be using. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later as well, but that'll include vehicle speeds, vehicle volumes, crash history, and some other items. So I'll dig into that. So the next phase, after we close this public input period, we will be in this recommend phase where we're really synthesizing and analyzing all of that data, including all of the input that we've gotten in this phase through all of these different methods. So I'll let you all know that we have several thousand comments on our map already. So we will take us some time to really, obviously digest and analyze and synthesize that into how that'll influence the bike network changes. And then from all of that data analysis, from the public input, as well as all of that supporting data, we will start making some draft changes to that bike network where we think new bikeways are recommended, where things change, where facilities need to be upgraded, where other types of spot improvements might be needed, as Taylor mentioned. So then we move into summer 2024, which will be our next period that we come back to you all for public comment. So we, again, similar to this, we will have a virtual meeting updating you all on that data analysis we did, updating you on the synthesis from that public input, and then presenting you with the draft network that we've come up with and getting input, a second round of feedback on how that looks, how those changes sit with the community at large. So starting to refine that draft network. And then at in fall of 2024, we will wrap up this project. So we will finalize that map based on that second round of public input. And with that finalized map, we will publish it. It'll be available to all of you. That's when DOTI, Department of Transportation Infrastructure, will start moving this plan into implementation. And so that's through their community transportation networks that were spoken about before, addressing some of those spot improvement locations that come up, but really giving them a refresh to that vision to continue implementing as they have been already. So great questions we had already about how we will use all of this public input we're getting in this phase. So the first thing is that the specific locations that we are getting input on, both you'll see on the map in a second, if people are dropping pins, drawing lines, or even just agreeing or disagreeing with their fellow community members' comments, all of that will directly inform changes to where new and improved bikeways are recommended, alongside that other data I spoke of, so traffic speeds, volumes, previous crashes. And in addition to the online comments, we'll be synthesizing comments we're getting through email, in person, all of those different channels will be included in that as well. Second, more general themes that aren't location specific, this intersection, this roadway, we will still be collecting and synthesizing and coming up with the big trends. What do a lot of people really care about, are really concerned about, are really excited about? And we will be keeping those in mind throughout this project to help inform the decision making that's going on, as well as helping inform DOTI's wider bike program as they continue to evolve the program. And then third, you know, sometimes in these processes, just more urgent things come up, like maintenance issues, things are broken, signs are down. So all of those more urgent maintenance type issues, urgent safety type issues will be relayed to Denver's 311 program, which is a wonderful program where you can go online or call on the phone and report an issue. So we will be taking those comments from this process, relaying that to that team to make sure those urgent issues are addressed through that more appropriate kind of rapid response program. All right, so I alluded to this earlier, but how will this data we're collecting right now be integrated into these new network changes? So as I mentioned, public and stakeholder input, your all's input is a huge part of that. And we will be looking at the numbers of the numbers of comments at certain locations, as well as what those comments obviously are saying and what types of really critical issues they're highlighting, and be changing the network based on that. And alongside that, we're going to be looking at equitable access. So how connected is the network and how good is the network at creating those connections between all of the neighborhoods, all of the different populations and communities in Denver to really essential services. We'll be looking at travel demand. Where are people already biking a lot? And where is an unmet demand where the facilities or the connections are lacking? And there's a demand that we can bring out of the woodwork, if you will, based on not having the support for it right now. network connectivity that's related to that equitable access, but just making sure bike lanes go across the city, connect to other bikeways. There are seamless ways to get around the city on a bike, scooter, rolling, etc. And understanding those critical gaps can often be around intersections and big barriers around the city. Crash history, so looking at where have crashes occurred historically and where can we be making improvements to reduce and eliminate eventually those crashes, particularly the severe and fatal crashes that occur on our roadways, particularly with people walking and biking, vulnerable users. We'll also be looking at speed and volume data, so vehicle speeds and vehicle volumes, how fast are cars going on the roadways now and how many of them. This will inform how intensive the infrastructure needs to be in order to make people on bikes and scooters feel safe on those roadways alongside cars. And then feasibility of implementation. Obviously, there are constraints that are a little bit outside of our control, or at least outside of a timeline that is reasonable in terms of what can be put in the ground and how much space there is, what drainage needs are, all things like that. So that's another consideration that we will have to be layering on to making changes to this network. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information. We'll give you an opportunity to digest a bit of that and then ask questions in a minute about all that. But first, I wanted to give you all a demo of that online survey and map that we keep referencing, so you can see how to use it, what's already there, and hopefully you all will feel comfortable jumping in and adding your own comments if you haven't already. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to reshare the screen. Okay, so here we have our online survey and map. When you first open up that link, which we'll jump back to the presentation in a minute, so we'll give you that link and that QR code, and you'll have all of that. It's also on the project website. But the survey is the first thing that comes up. If anyone needs this translated, this little icon in the corner here, if you click it, there's a whole bunch of different languages that this map and the comments in it can be translated into. We have it here just defaulted to letting people know that it can be translated in Spanish as the most common other language in Denver. So there's a few questions here about how you get around already, what challenges you experience, as well as some demographic questions to just get a good sense of who is answering this survey and who we've heard from and who we haven't. So after people take this survey, oh, and I'll point out one thing in this survey too, there's an option, just type out any comments you have. So I'll be getting into the map, which is, maybe not comfortable for everyone, but we have this option. You can just type all of your thoughts into this box or email us at this email. Again, this will be available at the end of the presentation. So you don't have to be comfortable with a map to give input. You can write it in the survey, you can email us. So just want to kind of point that out to start. All right. So once someone has taken the survey, that survey box will close. You can see the whole map. As I mentioned, we've already gotten several thousand comments on our map. So the easiest way to interact with this to start and to get comfortable is just zoom around to an area you care about, click on a comment. You can agree or disagree with that comment, and you can do that on as many comments around the map. So if you want to start there, just see what other community members are saying. That's a great way to give input, and we will be using those upvotes and downvotes, agree and disagree, in analyzing all of this data. So it's very useful to be agreeing and disagreeing with comments as you desire. All right, so that's kind of the simplest way to interact with this map. Then second is if you want to add your own new comment on the map. There's two ways you can do this. You can just place a dot on the map, or you can actually draw a new line. So the way you do this is hit add comment. you can select the type of comment that or the category your comment fits best in. So if it's a road crossing, if it's a destination that there are no connections to, we also have this other option for anything else that doesn't fit in these categories. And then these two options are lines. So you can draw a new line, bikeway needs improvement, or you need a new bikeway here. And then Bikeway is working well. If there's any areas that you'd like the city to know you like and that you'd like them to continue to emulate as they continue their bike program. So I will give an example of how to use this. First, you can kind of zoom to the location you want to add a comment. Say I want to give my comment at an intersection and a crossing. It feels unsafe. I will move the map around until it's placed on the location that I want it. I will say place marker here, and then this little pop-up window comes up. I can write my comment in this box and then hit, if you have a photo you want to upload to give us a little bit more context or show us exactly what you mean, you can do that, but totally optional. And then hit add comment to submit. If you want to clear your comment, you can just hit this X, it will go away and you can try again. So I'll show one more example of this with drawing a line. Say I want a new bike lane right here. You will click this new or improved bikeway again, get the little dot to sit where you want your bike lane to start drawing line, and then you can just click and add points on your line. If you want to move around, you can click and drag while you're drawing, and then you just click on your last point to finish. There's my line, can add any comment I'd like to about it, and then again, hit add comment, or if you need to start over, you can click the X. All right, so that's the basics of how to use this map really quickly. I'll talk through some of the other features in here if you want to play around a bit more, and then we will get to another Q&A session. So if you like a written instruction instead of this verbal version, we have the map instructions written here in the sidebar, so you can click those. You can also go to our project website, and we have video tutorials in both English and Spanish that you can watch again. So it'll be a similar tutorial to this if you prefer the video version, but don't remember this meeting later, which is fair. The other thing I want to point out is if you want a reminder of what all these different types of bikeways are, you can open up this sidebar that says type of bikeways and see descriptions and images of each of the bikeways that are shown on this map. And then finally, one little thing I'll show too is that if you hover over this little symbol on the right-hand side of my screen, it kind of looks like a square stack of pancakes. You can click off the background layers in the map so you can see those lines going away. So if you just want a simpler view of the map, feel free to go in here, check those off, and you don't have to see the background, or you can see, just traffic signals, just trails, recommended trails, to just give you a more simplified view of the map. Similarly, you can turn on and off the other people's comments, the different types of comments if you only want to see one or a couple at a time. All right, I think that is everything for our demo. I will switch us back over to our presentation, and then we will open it up for more questions.
Cool, thanks. I think now we can maybe field some more other questions in the chat in our remaining 10 minutes, and then we'll let you all go at 6, but for now we'll just do a little bit of Q&A. So Nora, if you want to field a few of those.
Yeah.
I just want to preface, I've been reading a few of the questions here in the chat. And thank you all for, so much engagement and so much feedback. This has been really fun to be here with you all today and to see all the questions. I'm seeing a lot of questions about specific corridors, specific projects, intersections. Please put those in the comment tool that Sydney just showed us. We'll be able to more easily, quickly process those if they're in the tool, and we want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. We'll also continue to, if we don't get to your question, we'll try to put out a FAQ after this meeting later this week or next week that hopefully answers some of the questions that we aren't able to get to in our short hour together. But yeah, take it away, Nora, if you've got any good questions.
We do have a question about the caveat that was on the survey. The survey says some comments may not be visible after posted. Can you explain that, Sydney?
Yes, absolutely. And that I have a great new update for us on that. I worked with the platform. Now all the comments that were posted should be showing up. The issue we were having before is because we got so many comments, they were not all loading on the map. We still had the comments in the back end. We had access to them, see everything. So it wasn't an issue of actually losing people's input, but was an issue of just the map loading. So we worked with the platform. They increased the limit of how many things could load at a time. So we will be taking that disclaimer off soon. So that is remedied, but that was just an issue with the volume of comments we got, which is a great problem to have, but we have solved that issue now.
We do have a question about diverters. Are they going to be a tool in the toolbox? That's not specific to the survey, but probably a question for Taylor.
Yeah, definitely. Diverters are always a tool in the toolbox. We continuously monitor vehicle speeds and volumes on our new neighborhood bikeways to make sure that those fall within our parameters for a neighborhood bikeway. So that's less than 20 miles an hour, less than about 15 to 2,000 vehicles per day for the other engineering nerds in the crowd. But yeah, we definitely use diverters when those vehicle volumes start to creep up into the unacceptable range.
I'm trying to cram in as many questions as we can. We have a question about maintenance, a question about interaction with major arterials. I'm going to put those two there for you right now to answer.
So
maintenance happen of these bikeways?
Yeah, great question. So we try to do our best with our limited fleet to plow all of our protected bike lanes. Denver Parks and Rec does a great job at plowing all of our trails, and we're working tirelessly every year to try to get more and more of our bikeways plowed and plow them more frequently. So that's definitely, not necessarily plowing and maintenance isn't necessarily a part of our effort that we're talking about today. But we're working continuously with our maintenance folks, and we have some of our maintenance folks on our project team for this project that'll help us identify spots where maybe our flex posts are getting hit and need to be maintained frequently. And maybe those are locations where we need to take another look at what that intersection looks like, what that roadway looks like, so that we can either harden that intersection or redesign it so that our maintenance crews aren't needing to go out there and replace roadway elements so frequently.
In that maintenance piece, can you address snow?
Yes. So yeah, like I said a second ago, so our maintenance crews have a mini snow sweeper that can fit into our protected bike lanes. So we do our best to plow every protected bike lane, especially in Denver. And are working to expand our kind of snow program to more and more streets in Denver and make sure that we get all of those things plowed. But if you see an issue that needs to be resolved, we really recommend that you report that to 311. That is the quickest way that we can get those issues resolved.
So how do bikeways interact with major arterials, and do you address traffic signals in order to improve that interaction?
Yeah, great question. So that's definitely part of particularly that upgrades component of this project. where we're going to be looking at some of those hotspots, key intersections, especially those arterial crossings that feel really unsafe and uncomfortable. And sometimes that intervention is the best way to go about that is just a physical change in how the roadway looks. So adding posts and curbing and stuff to protect the bikeway at those intersections. And sometimes, yeah, we do make signal modifications. So we install things like leading pedestrian and bike intervals that let bicyclists and peds get out in front of the cars and get to move first. And that increases visibility and prioritizes that bike and ped movement and has been shown to decrease crash risk.
There's a question several questions regarding enforcement of the proper way of using these bikeway facilities, and related to that are there public education campaigns to inform people, educate people on how best to use them.
Yeah, great question. So as far as Denver Police Department enforcement, we definitely work with DPD to identify locations where we see high instances of speeding. We'll flag DPD and say, hey, can we get a vehicle or a police presence out there to do some speed radar mitigation. As far as education, yes, that's definitely something that I hope that the Denver Bikeway program can do more of in the future. We've got a lot of community partners that actually do a lot of that great work for us. So a big shout out to the Denver Streets Partnership. They do a lot of education around bicycling. We have our Safe Routes to School program actually within Dottie, does a lot of education in schools on biking and the rules of the road and how to be courteous and share the road with others. So yeah, we definitely lean a lot on our community partners for that piece, but we also have a little bit of that in-house, particularly with our schools.
If an installation doesn't work, if things change in a manner that is negative, what does Dottie do to rectify that?
Yeah, great question. We're always open to feedback, and we will go out and make changes if we deem that they're necessary. Obviously, there are lots of projects that some folks have differing opinions on. Some folks think they're great, some folks think they're terrible. So we'll go out there and we'll collect some of that actual on the ground, less biased data, make sure that the project and the installation that we put in does achieve our project goals that we set out in the beginning. So typically that's just safety for folks biking and walking and trying to get to the bus, safety for folks driving too. So is the project that we installed still achieving those goals? And how can we make small minor tweaks or big changes to make sure that the project is still achieving that?
We have a question about how you're approaching this study, particularly around schools.
Yeah, great question. Safe Routes to School is a big piece of this project. So we want to make sure that all kids can ride their bikes to school. So we'll be working closely with our Safe Routes to School team to help identify some of those routes. And like I was saying earlier, big part of this project is drawing more lines on that map that you saw in that survey that Sydney shared earlier. So this was our 2015 plan. We want more dense network, more lines. We wanted to connect to schools. We want to connect to parks. We want to make sure we're getting folks where they need to go. And schools is definitely one of those key destinations that we want to ensure is connected.
When the city does street paving and bike infrastructure comes out, how quickly does it go back in?
Oh, like if we take away, if we repave and restripe. Typically, that's a great question. It kind of depends on the project and the type of repaving. There are different types of pavement processes that we do. But typically within a few weeks to a month at most. The paving crews are different than the crews that come and do the striping. So it's all about just trying to schedule those two different crews to follow each other as close as possible. So our goal is immediately, but sometimes that lags a little bit because they get busy.
Point of clarification, which I think is probably obvious to many people on this, but how do you manage motorcycles that use bike lanes to bypass traffic?
Yeah, that is technically not legal. Hard to catch, but that would be an enforcement issue with Denver Police Department would be the folks that would enforce that.
And
We're over time.
Oh, we're over time. Time flies when you're having fun. So I'll close this out here. Thank you all for joining. Please share the survey with your friends and family. Take the survey yourselves. We'd love to hear from you. And please give us a call at the phone number here and the email if you have any further questions that aren't addressed in the online map and survey tool. With that, thank you all. Thank you, project team, for being here tonight and presenting and answering all these questions with me.
We got nearly 200 questions tonight, so forgive us if we didn't get to your question. We will do the best that we can to create an FAQ and get those answers out to you.
Where would those answers be posted on the project website?
The project website, yeah, which is it's not on here. bit.ly, so bit.ly/Denver Moves Bikes.
I will put that in the chat right now.
And we'll be posting a recording of this meeting for folks who missed it as well on that website. All right, so I think Sydney, you're done.
Yeah, I just put that in the chat, so I'll give people a second to copy it. And let me double check that was the right. Oh, that's it on my end quickly. Ooh, I think I did the wrong capitals. Okay, sorry, no capitals. Let me do that again. Give everyone a second to copy it, and then
the capital one still worked for me, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. If the capital one doesn't work for anyone, there's the lowercase version in the chat. My browser seems to be very sensitive to capitals, so just in case.
Cool. Well, thank you all and have a great evening.
Okay, I'll end the webinar.
I think we're good. Yeah, let's